On episode 261 of the Tennis Files podcast, you'll learn how to coach yourself and problem solve through adversity with Raheel Manji. Hey there, welcome back to the show, and whether it's your first time or 200th time listening, I really appreciate you tuning in. And today I have an interview with Raheel Manji, who is the CEO of Mission Elite. He is also the former Team Canada and Indiana Hoosier captain. He played number 1 at Indiana University. He was a very highly ranked junior, very highly ranked college tennis player, and he was also a formerly ranked ATP pro. And he's doing great things at Mission Elite, helping really fantastic players excel and get the most out of their potential. So really glad to have Raheel on the show. As we'll talk about, I met him recently in Toronto through one of my college teammates at his wedding. Shout out to Irfan and Stephanie. A really fun time there that I had, meeting a lot of great people. Also met another podcast guest, Gibran. So great to see him as well, and my former teammates. So yeah, and then we got to talking, and I had realized that I had seen Raheel on some podcasts and heard him, speak very eloquently and seen some of his posts. So yeah, definitely figured out it would be great to have him on the show. So we're going to talk about a lot of really important subjects today, including creating a culture of toughness and high standards. As you'll hear, he went through a lot of tough love at Indiana University. Raheel did, as well as the importance of being able to self-coach and be your own cheerleader, and a lot of really other great advice for us amateur and club level players, and some really excellent principles and explanations of them that you definitely want to listen to. So this was a really fun one. And yeah, so let's get to it. Without further ado, here is my interview with Raheel Manji. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Tennis Files podcast, and it's a pleasure and an honor to have with me Raheel Manji from Mission Elite. He is their CEO, and a pretty cool story. I went to my friend and former college teammate Irfan Shemazdan's wedding, who is actually his brother, is a professional doubles player, and so then I met Raheel, and we started talking, and it was just such a great night at Irfan and Stephanie's wedding, and I just really enjoyed speaking with you about tennis, and come to find out that you do a lot of great things in the tennis world. And then it kind of jogged my mind because I remember seeing like different podcasts that you were on actually, and posts and stuff. So yeah, first off, great to have you on, Raheel, and how have you been?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate that, and I love what you're doing with Tennis Files and everything else as well here. So first and foremost, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, anytime, Raheel, anytime. And I was also really impressed to see that you see your age. I think you're only a few years out of college, if I'm not mistaken. And it seems like you're very mature, and you've got the entrepreneurship side of you, and you formed a great company here. So really excited to talk about it, as well as a lot of different ways that we can improve as tennis players. One story that kind of struck me, and I know the audience loves stories, is that I read one about you where you had to do a lot of running and your teammate ran over your foot. So you want to tell us about that one? That was a pretty good one.
Yeah, that was crazy times. I mean, it was my first year at Indiana, and we had our head coach was in the military, and he ran the the program like that. So we had like Hell Month, and we weed out the week and everything. But needless to say, that whole coaching staff got fired in this day and age. We had some crazy days. 4:50 a.m. wake ups. We were straight to the track. It was painful days, tough days, but very, very good if you have a good perspective with it all. Basically, it was about building your mental toughness through physical, discomfort, or discomfort as in general. And for some people, you ask them about the time there, they'll be very, they hate it. But for me, I thought it was like a critical time for my development. I think it's probably one of the most impactful times in my life.
Gotcha. And so basically it was like you having to run a bunch, and then like based on like where you place, you would have to like, adjust your, like, I forgot if it was starting times or like how much you ran. and then like your teammate ran over your foot and you still finished, barely in time. So I was wondering, like, how do we tap into that, like in normal circumstances? Because I feel like, a lot of us are just leaving a lot on the table and not pushing ourselves to our maximum. I mean, I think of like David Goggins, where he talks about like, if you feel like you're at capacity, you actually have like, you're only like 40% of the way there or something like that. So how do you kind of tap into that, like when you need to?
Well, it was crazy times. I mean, first and foremost, we had a pretty tough culture there. I wasn't doing it alone. If you ask any of my teammates during those times, they all have some crazy stories of their own. And just to kind of be in that environment where everybody is going through. So, like I said, it was kind of you weed out the weak type of program. Like I was the only person of my class that ended up finishing through Indiana. They all either quit or dropped out or were kicked off or whatever. So the people that were left, they were really good influences in terms of like never letting yourself get soft. And, I was around tough guys and because that was all that was really left in a program like that there. So, well, that's one good thing is like, you don't have somebody soft to your left or soft to your right. So you don't have that excuse. And yeah, I mean, as simple as like, obviously it was a great program and we wanted to be a part of a winning program. And if you want that bad enough, you'll do what's necessary to stick through. And, obviously, I had a really good scholarship there. I had a full ride there. So I was going to fight hard for that and whatever it took. And I had opportunities there. My teammates, Sam Monad got to 300 in the world there. Dan Bednarczyk, they all were playing, really high in the NCAA. So we had a really strong team, Sven Lalic. And I wanted to be a part of that. So that was kind of the sacrifice that was needed. I was also 17 years old. So it was a hell of an opportunity for me to be around like a very older age group that I knew was going to be probably one of the reasons why I could have a pro career if I was going to. So
I love that. So yeah, so I guess part of that too is like finding other people who have that mindset and then surrounding yourself. That's a great point there. Yeah. So I guess and generally too, I mean, for whether it's for tennis programs that you have or just like for ourselves, like what do you think the key is to creating a culture of toughness and high standards?
Yeah, I think it's non-negotiables essentially. I think it's about, and this is kind of a thing I'm really hard on, is just telling the truth. I mean, if your standard is high, and what's wrong or what's soft or what's cutting corners, I think it's really important that through leadership you're honest about it. And there's different ways to be honest about it. I think one really good way to be honest about it is through humor. But I think it's really non-negotiables. I think it's speaking your truth. If you think something like just today, I had a couple players that I watched them watch balls just kind of go by them, and it sickened me a little bit. And I just couldn't hold it back. I just had to be honest about it. So I think it's really important that leadership is honest and they stand for their non-negotiables, what they think are their standards, because you probably have really high standards. And if you don't impose that upon your teammates or your players or the program you're a part of, they're not really getting the best of you. And everybody in the back of their mind knows that they're kind of slacking and they have more to give. So it starts there.
Yeah. And so what were some of your non-negotiables, like when you're playing either at Indiana or on the tour?
Yeah, I had a trigger for being late. Like it was a trigger. And so we set a rule that every minute we were late, we were going to run a 17, which now it's a big number in Michelin. We talk about it a lot. It's basically 17 sprints side to side under 50 seconds. And so like that was a big trigger for me, being late. That was a non-negotiable, because I think what happened is, it just shows you don't respect the time. You don't respect what people are doing. And it makes a difference between being a recreational team and being an elite team trying to fight for Big Ten championships and NCAA titles. So I think that was a big one there. And of course, the next one was excuses and feeling sorry for yourself. I think those were non-negotiables, where it's like, we're just wasting time feeling sorry for ourselves there when nobody really gives a shit, to be honest. You're the only one that really feels sorry for yourself at the end of the day. So that was a big one, not letting your teammates get into that kind of sad, pouty face, pouty mode, just being tough, right? Because, it's tough to win national championships. It's tough to win Grand Slams. It's tough to be on the tour. It's tough to do big things. It's tough to do anything outside of tennis too. And so if you're soft in preparation, you're probably not getting very good results, in such a competitive world.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, what other sorts of things do you do to like instill toughness? Because I feel like if you're soft right now, and if you just like once in a while you have like tough things that you do, it might not be enough. So like I'm curious like what types of practices you have that maybe we could try out to get ourselves to be more tough and disciplined.
Well, I think you want to have that as I think you really want to try to take it on as your identity,
Mm.
and I think before you do that, you need to see the benefit of it. And so this is where the education really is critical. Like I can't just go to my player or my teammate or, our staff and say, "Hey, be tough." I think it's really important to understand what being tough is going to do for them, and why it's such a necessary tool for them to be successful. Like I said, anything hard is going to have hard days, and you're going to need a certain level of tough. So I think it starts with really educating everybody as, hey, what comes out of being just a tough beast? And then second of all, it's like, how many tough beasts can we recruit? Because it's really hard for me to change an 18, 19-year-old right now, right? Or 20-year-old right now. It's tough. They've spent 20 years being the way they are. So recruiting is a big thing. We want to recruit staff that have that identity. Like, like our head coach of the prep academy right now, Malik, like, you guys just a beast. I mean, he's 5 a.m. spin classes. Then he's, coaching the guys for 6 hours. He's running his 17s with them. He's just, and if you look at him, he's just a tough guy. And, his whole career was not based off talent. Guy had wrist surgery, played one for LSU, one for Penn State, but he shows our guys what it means to be the example of toughness. And that's what I want. That's who I want to be around. That's who I want our players to be around. That's who I want our staff to be around, because he attracts those types of people. So education and recruiting is critical, especially when we're dealing with older age groups, I think.
Got your Raheel. So yeah, I love that point about just kind of like making that your self identity. Like, I am a disciplined person, and then it kind of just gets into you, with practice, obviously. The question for you is like, I know there's a lot of us who maybe don't have the resources, or, we're like club level players and whatnot. Maybe we don't even have a coach, but I'm curious about like how we can self-coach ourselves and, be essentially like our own cheerleaders in effect. Cause I know that has a big impact if you're able to pull that off.
Well, that's a great question. The self-coaching thing is a huge thing that we talk a lot about. Like, we don't want our players to just rely on coaching. We want them to be able to self-coach themselves, and not just play. I think that's just a valuable skill for anybody in any aspect of life, because you're not always going to have somebody holding your hand. And in a sport like tennis, if you want to get specific, right, there's no coaching past the NCAA on-court coaching. And so if you just have great coaching, but you're not able to coach yourself well, you're probably not going to be a really good tennis player outside of, college tennis or whatever. So, the other thing is, when you go on the tour, you're going to go to the middle of nowhere, Africa or India or Israel or, the Middle East, and at time, maybe you're going to go alone, and you have to be able to talk yourself through these tough situations. Because if you can't coach yourself in terms of how to solve problems within the match, but also how to solve some of the problems outside of the matches, like, oh, how do I get through not being around my parents, my family, my girlfriend, my friends? You're probably going to quit, and you're not going to get through it. It's the same, there are tough times when you're trying to do tough things. And so the ability to self-coach within the matches, but also outside of the matches, which is more of a motivational standpoint, is huge. And then being the inner cheerleader, that's all about building yourself up when the world is trying to break you down. It's like, you see so many tennis players, they go, oh, I suck, I'm this, I can't hit a backhand, blah, 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 blah. Well, like, you already have your competitors trying to tell you suck. Oftentimes you have your away team trying to tell you suck. Oftentimes there's toxicity and people telling you suck. Like, the least you could be is the one person in the world that is just, you have to be your biggest cheerleader, because they're in a competitive environment. There are so many people trying to break you down that you can't go on their team. You have to go be strong and really be like in your head, cheerleading yourself, and, strong talk, always fight that, like, block it out and fight it, so.
Yeah, I love that, Raheel. And so, what's an example of like self-coaching, like during a match, and then self-coaching, like not during a match? Because you mentioned both are a little bit different.
Yeah, so building tennis IQ. So inside the tennis match, like you need to be like a coach is probably going to know that statistically speaking, the highest percentage way to win a point off the return is to return deep down the middle or the wide serves. It's really important that you study the game intensely so that you can help problem solve within the match. Okay, how do I manage momentum on my opponent's side? How do I close out the match? You got to be able to tell yourself, okay, like you have to study these things. Expansive body language when I'm trying to close a match. That's self-coaching inside the match. Or when I'm down, get the adrenaline going, pump myself up, get myself kind of triggered and engaged mentally in this match. That's self-coaching inside the match. So tactics, mental tactics. How do I? Oh, okay, I'm cramping. The ATP, the energy in your body. I need deep breaths. You got to be able to coach yourself within the match or not rely on somebody to tell you that because they can't, right? Tennis is unfortunately not like hockey where you can kind of coach them through. And an example of self-coaching outside of the tennis match would be you're on a flight to middle of nowhere, you're going to Cyprus or whatever, and you just left your girlfriend or or whatever, your parents or your family, and you're like, I'm not going to see them for 2 months. Hey, like, what would a coach tell you in that position? He'd say, hey, look, yes, it's tough. Yeah, you're going to miss them, but you're trying to do something greater right now. And these are the sacrifices that are necessary for you to be able to do something greater and make your biggest impact as a person. That's why you're on this flight right now. Okay. Or for example, like, no, don't go reach for the cookie. Like it's not going to help you. Do everything you can to take out the things that hurt you and only do things that help you. That's an example of self-coaching outside of tennis. So outside of the match.
Got it. Got it. Love that. How do we become better problem solvers? Because I know there's, obviously we have varying degrees of skill with that. And, some of us, like we encounter an issue, opponent, and we just don't know what to do. Other of us, have some idea. So how do we become better at that?
That's a great question. I just had my brother on. My brother worked at Google, Facebook, Yelp, Instagram, and then he started he's had a couple of companies acquired, and like they have a very interesting dynamic in terms of Google. I mean, what they're looking for is creative solution makers, right? So they're looking at guys that can't just do the job they're done, but it can actually bring more to the table. And so I asked him this question, and he had a really interesting response. He goes, from a very young age, any problem that comes in front of you, you have to be the person that won't say, like, we can't do this. You have to intensely and obsessively search for a solution when the average would walk away. And even if you're not successful in that pursuit, the very fact that you engaged in that and you struggled to solve the Rubik's Cube when people would have left after a minute, like that is how you're training creative solution making. And, the most successful people in the world in any industry, they're all creative solution makers because they bring to the table things that the average won't. And you don't bring things to the table that the average won't if you're not willing to kind of venture out of what is deemed impossible in some very ways. So you have to be willing to take on every challenge that the average person would walk away from. Oh, coach says 5-minute plank. Most kids are going to say, can't do that. Why am I even going to try that? Drop at 2 minutes. Be the person that refuses to say can't do it. Do the plank and try to get that 5-minute. You may not, but it's in the effort and the pursuit of that you get closer to figuring it out. And you might find an answer that the average person wouldn't have, just by trying, right?
Yeah, I love that. And also kind of related is like fear, which you kind of alluded to. Like, I guess people who, they think there's certain boundaries and they're kind of afraid to go past it or maybe to like embarrass themselves or whatnot. So, I mean, how does fear play into, tennis and life in general, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's a great question again. I mean, so I joke with our guys all the time. I'm going to put a sign at the front of our gate there. It's going to say, permission to suck. Permission, when you enter into our facility, you have permission to suck. And I often tell our guys, like, it's funny, we're doing a drill today. I was feeding the overhead, and they were like, everybody, like sometimes you miss overheads. It's windy and it's embarrassing, right? And I was telling them, like, don't be afraid to fail miserably. Like, don't be afraid to. And I say, here is a place where you have permission to suck. But I want you to go and hit that overhead with, like, don't try to force it or hesitate it in because you're scared to look like an idiot. Go after it like an idiot, like a crazy man. And yeah, maybe the ball is going to go out of the park, or maybe you're going to completely whiff it. But in the non-hesitation, your willingness to jump into the challenge without doubt, that's where eventually when you do click, you click. I mean, you click. And so that's the thing. It's like we have to get over the fear of being embarrassed, because when you get over the fear of, like, and judgment, like when you get over fear of people judging you and being embarrassed, when you're not afraid to look stupid, I'm always singing in front of my player, like our players, always like an idiot, and like they all laugh, right? And I don't give a shit, like I don't, and I just have a great time with that. It's like people are attracted to people that I think just don't care about what other people are thinking. And I think that's a huge trait for you to go do something bold. Like Mission Elite, for example, I got a lot of people judging and all that stuff. I don't give a shit. I'm loving this. Everybody loves that, right? And so it's the same thing. It's like you want to go do something great. Like, you got to get over that. And when you take the first step to, you realize, like, it's not a big deal,
Yeah, I really love that as well, Raheel.
I mean,
Yeah, I
you
remember
do it too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like, it's not comfortable. People have a fear of public speaking more than anything, and you do it so often. I bet you don't have a fear of it anymore. You weren't. I'm sure people judge your podcast there, but look, it's doing great. You're having great people on there. Like, I've gone through your stuff there, and you had to be courageous to do that. So, props to you for that.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks. Props to you as well. Yeah, definitely. I was nervous in the first many episodes, but after a while, now it's I don't care too much, and you get used to some of the odd comments here and there.
Yeah.
And yeah, when you were speaking about the fear, I also remembered, like, many years ago, it's just a baseliner. That was how I played. So then I tried serving volleying a couple points, and then, like, I hit some horrible volleys, and I thought, oh, everyone's looking at me. They think I'm terrible, so I'm just gonna stick to my own game and stuff. But then, like, later on one day, I said to myself, I really want to have this tool, and, like, no matter what, I'm just gonna keep doing it for, like, 4 or 5 games in a row when I serve, and gradually you get it. So you get over that issue of people judging you. So yeah, it's definitely, I think you're right too about people being attracted to people who just take risks and don't really care too much about that stuff.
Yeah. And then you started serving volleying a lot more?
Yeah, I mean, I do it here and there. Yeah, in doubles especially. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So it feels good to have that skill now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Raheel, I also want to talk about your career a bit, because, I mean, for those people who don't know, I mean, you were a fantastic player. I mean, we did talk about you playing at Indiana, playing #1, and you also, played on the tour as well. And I was curious about, like, your juniors as also, because I just am wondering about, like, the progression of players, like, how they are in the juniors relative to college and then professional. So, like, how did that develop for you, and at what point did you get to, like, like a top 10 or top 5 ranking in your section?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was pretty fortunate in that I rose the ranks pretty fast there, because I think, and I still believe this, what it takes to win in juniors is just a kind of an attitude where I'm willing to die before losing to you, and I'm willing to be out here longer than you. And I was a pusher. I was a moonballer. Like, ask Irfan. They were always trying to. I was a big moonballer as a junior, big time, because
Nice.
I hated to lose, and I was always willing to be out there than the guy across that, and that works in juniors. And then right around 14, 15, as I started, like, so I grew up kind of in the Rublev, Zverev era there. And these were the guys who I was seeing in, like, the round of 16 Orange Bowl and whatnot. And, eventually, as you venture into higher and higher competition, you have to transition from, like, a never die attitude, a moon baller, to more aggressive. But it's really important to keep that core trait, because on the days you're playing bad and the offense isn't clicking, I think you need, like Murray does that a lot, and Nadal does that a lot, where they revert to that never die attitude, which helps them be great on their worst days when they're not kind of firing on their offensive cylinders. And so I ended up making the semifinals of a 25K when I was 16. And the way to do it was that was when I was really successful in my juniors. Like when I transitioned, it wasn't crazy reckless offense, but it was like almost counter punchy, So I went from kind of moonballer to counter punchy and really alert on defense, where it was really like where people would think I was vulnerable. I wasn't really. I'd kind of hit a cheeky slice and get myself an opportunity. But then I found that to be successful in the NCAA, I had to be really aggressive. So this was the transformations from a game standpoint. Never missing. That's how I was successful until the U16s, to figuring out how to make people vulnerable and kind of like counter punching. And then, that got me on the pro tour, I would say, and got me into like strong positions in the NCAA. And then to be like one of the top guys there, then I really had to, if you go watch, like there's some YouTube videos of me playing in NCAA, it's very aggressive and it's very imposing. And this was the transition from a game standpoint to be able to then go on the tour. But at the core of it all was that competitiveness that had to be there from U10 to, when I stopped playing, that competitiveness of like, okay, there's a principle at Michelin. It's called there's never an excuse to lose. So it's like, okay, there's never an excuse to lose, so I have to adapt my game. But had I been like, oh no, I'm a moonballer, I don't know, I don't have the game to be a good top NCAA player or top pro, then I would have just walked away. But there, with the never an excuse to lose mentality, that helped me adapt my games. I feel like I adapted my game from 180 from a moonballer to super aggressive by the end, So
yeah, I love hearing that. It's super interesting, Raheel. And I remember actually when I was like in the 12s and whatnot, 12s, maybe a little bit of 14s, I also moonballed and got pretty high. But it was funny because, I remember one of the players who was highly ranked, but I beat him. He was like, "This isn't tennis."
I know.
I didn't care.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, that's what we were talking about earlier, right? Where like they're gonna judge you. Oh, he's a moonballer. He's a pusher. Screw it, I win. It's like that's what you were doing.
Yeah, love that. So one question that popped up in my head, obviously you do want to have that, like, I got to win mentality, so important, as you said, was the core for everything you did moving forward. But I think, a lot of, especially club level players, they kind of conflate it, if that's the right word, but basically like they're so focused on the result that then they get like nervous and they can't perform and everything. So how do you kind of balance that out or deal with that, that yearning and drive to win, yet, you don't think of it so much like that it'll mess you up?
Totally. So if you are competitive enough, you realize that the way to help you win is to be process minded. And so I'll give you a story. I had a player a couple years back, and it was a preseason to the season of she was going to play in the NCAA. And I'm on court, and she's really working hard, really wants to win, but working hard. And it's almost like a stressful kind of hard work. I'm like, you've ever been around those like players that are just so tight, but they want to win so bad?
Yeah.
And I go like you got to relax, like I get it. You want to win, but you got to relax. And she went back to her and she couldn't do it. Right. She's like, I can't. And I said, okay, sat her on the bench. I said, no, you got to relax. She goes, I can't. I just want to win so bad. And I said to her, I said, no. You don't want to win bad enough. You only kind of want to win right now. Because if you wanted to win bad enough, you'd understand that you have to control your emotions. And so like kind of competitive people, they get to this point there where they care so much, but they can't get over their emotions. Ultra competitive people get to the point where they care even more, that they sit down with themselves before the match or the night before the match and say, I am going to leave it all out there. And to give myself the best chance to win, I have to let go of the result. So it's that mental contract. Like I always say, like, okay, if you're still holding on to the result, you're only kind of competitive. You have to be so competitive that you realize that the way to give yourself the best chance to win is to focus purely on process goals, execution goals, and to leave all the noise and the things you can't control, winning or losing, out of the equation. So there's like three types of players, right? Number one is like, I don't care enough, so I don't even care about the result, but my efforts aren't there. Then there's the next level. It's I care more, but I only care enough to the point where I still don't realize the importance of that I can't control the uncontrollables. And we're looking for the guys that are so competitive that they do everything they can to win, which includes letting go of the winning or losing, which is out of their control. It's like, I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah, it makes total sense. I don't know if you met him, but our Irfan and my coach, and there's several guys there and gals as well who were on the team at Irfan's wedding with Stephanie, Keith Puryear. So like he would always tell us focus on the process, not the results. And I've told this story before, but at my very first college tennis match, we had an invitational at Yale, and I was playing like a friend of mine from back home in Maryland, and I was up on him like 6-2, 5-1, and I thought about how it'd be awesome to win my first match, and then I just tightened up like too much, and just obviously the rest. And then my coach told me you just got to focus on the process, not the results. And it's just kind of the learning process that you go through, and when you sit down, like you said, and really study and think like, well, how do I perform at my peak? That's one of the things you got to do, is just
totally.
Yeah, exactly. So I love that. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it. Yeah,
definitely real.
We've all been there.
Yeah, all have got experience it at some point. One kind of random question. I was I was watching King Richard, and I was reminded about the fact that like Venus and Serena, they didn't play any junior tournaments. And I was just curious, especially with you having Mission Elite and helping players, into college and Pro Tour and whatnot. Like, I'm curious about your take on that. Like, is that something that's just kind of rare? Like, do you think that juniors should be played for players to like get to the highest level, or do you think there's like a place for some players to like actually skip it, and that somehow could be useful?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I've thought a little bit about, especially now as the company starts to overlook younger and younger players.
Right.
So I have two thoughts about it. Now I need to sit down and spend more time on it, but I'll tell you my rough drafts.
Yeah.
Of this thing. So first and foremost, one of the tough things is, like ideally, I would love to put a super competitive kid, which I think is the base of any successful player who maximizes their potential. And when I say like maximize their potential, I think ultra competitiveness is what maximizes potential, and talent brings you success, but ultra competitiveness maximizes potential. So if I have a super, super competitive kid who is like we talked about, a creative solution maker, and who will look at a challenge and say, I'm going to try to solve that, even though people think it's impossible. Okay, that, and we educate them on the importance of, hey, you may lose a lot, but you can't lose your confidence with it. In fact, every loss you have to gain confidence, because every loss you have, you're going to evaluate the loss hard, and you're going to get smarter, wiser, better, faster for it. Then you should gain confidence for that. And if we can educate a player on that, so they have ultra competitiveness, we've shifted their perspective to understand that every loss they have should give them confidence, not take confidence away. And they're a creative solution maker, where they won't say this is impossible. They're like the type of people that think they can beat anybody. Then I want to put them in the highest level tournaments I possibly can, because I want to expose. If their ultimate goal is to end up being a pro, I want them to have 8 to 10, 11 years of pro experience by the time they're 23. Like, that's maybe a little bit of a crazy theory, but that's kind of because I think, there's so many things to learn to transition to pro. You got to learn the lifestyle. You got to learn the way they play. You got to learn how to be on the road. You got to, like, if you have like years of experience of that with that. You know what you're getting into. You cut time of transition. It takes people a little bit of transition time to go from like NCAA to pro tour, even if their skill level is there, their maturity is not there because it's a different way of competing. You don't have teammates anymore, whatever. You're not juniors anymore. And then they play a lot different. They play, more big. And so that's kind of my theory there. Now, if I have a kid who doesn't have or I don't feel has an unwavering belief in themselves, or I feel like they can get discouraged a little bit easy, I want to be careful not throwing them into such a deep pool and them potentially drowning. I want them to balance out, get some wins in juniors and get some experience high up. And, like they need more balance. So if I have a kid that is just like ready to take on the world, I'm going to put him in the best tournaments ever, and even if he gets his ass beat. But if I have a kid that maybe is a little more, needs to kind of like work on confidence a little bit, we need to get him some wins and be a little bit more strategic about it. That's my theories. It's rough drafts.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. What do you think your kids mostly are? Do you think they're mostly the second bucket where they don't have like that, supreme, confidence about themselves? Probably.
Yeah, mostly all of them. Even even the best players I've ever met, it's very rare to find that. It's funny because sometimes my best players weren't the ones that maximize their potential, but I got like. I would say our head coach now, Malik of the Prep Academy, he's pretty close to maximize his potential and he wasn't the best player, but if you are around him for 2 weeks, he is so like, people are scared, right? People are scared. He's not scared to compete. He'll go do tough things. He's a rarity in that. He's not the company's best player ever, On the other hand, there's some that were so talented and successful, but miss that. But I would say it's like 1% you find have an unwavering belief or perspective on competing. I think it's so rare. And that was a shocker to me a little bit when I transitioned out of playing into more management roles, is like learning this truth,
Great stuff. As far as your play at Indiana, like I think I saw when I was doing some research on you, were you were like 31? I know that was like in your junior year, right? Like what was your highest ranking? Was like 30s?
Yeah, we got to 17 there. I got to 17 there.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, Indiana was a great time because I just had great teammates. Like they were so good. Antonio Semblin, he was our number 2. He beat the number 1 player in the country back to back to back.
Whoa.
We had Bennett Crane. He was, he beat the number 1 guy in the country. I had Kayvon Tabrizi. I had Sam Onat end up being 300 in the world. Like it's a hell of some teammates there that really pushed us. And to be able to lead that program with these guys on the team there was amazing there. And it's funny. Most of the company's hires are connected to Indiana right now because, the toughness and the lessons that I think we learned in that program through both our head coaches that, Coach Jeremy Wirtz was number 1 in the country and he came from Ohio State, very tough program. And then our first one was in the military, and he did unbelievable things with the program too. Very tough approach, Helmut, all that stuff. Yeah. So the type of guys, I know what these guys went through in those years there. And these are the guys I want associated. And if you look, there's so many Indiana alum that are part of Mission Elite in one way or the other.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that when looking at the roster, which is pretty awesome. For everybody, also for you guys to stay connected throughout life. What would you say is the difference between like the top 10 singles players in the NCAAs versus 50 and after? Like, I'm curious about like what do you think separated? Like, was it like mainly mental or was it like some other skill sets? What do you think?
So top 10 in the NCAA compared to top 50 in the NCAA?
Yeah, 15. Yeah, pretty much.
Great question.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to who manages it better, manages the season better. Because, there's so much pressure every match to keep a ranking that high is so tough. And it comes down to I really believe it. A lot of it comes down to like it's so emotional, right? The season's so emotional, like it's so you're screaming every match, you're playing
Yeah.
clinches, you're fighting, you're with your teammates, you're on the road. It's very exhausting on you. And I've come to learn how people manage their life outside of the competing within the seasons is critical. It's even to an extent of like you got to let go of your teammates that don't want to jump on board and do things right. There was a season where I spent too much time on our guys that didn't want to do things the right way, and it took away energy from my performance. And as I got older, I learned that to manage the seasons better, you have to, again, you got to control the controllables. And, anything that's out of your control or a waste of energy, you have to be like tough enough to say, no, I'm not going to waste my time on that bullshit. Or, like you have to feel like people will wear themselves out between school, partying, girls, guys, whatever, and the season and being on the road and dealing with lineup and dealing with coaches is exhausting. So the biggest help you can do that I think the top 50, top 10, they're all very similar level, but the consistency of winning comes down to a lot like who can bring their closest to their best, because nobody's ever at their best, but closest to their best every match. And a lot of that is done on like when I was like done my playing career, but back in the NCAA, like a lot of the things I was dealing with our players were like, are you managing your relationship? Are you managing your school? Are you sleeping well? Are you, yeah.
Yeah, super important. There's outside of tennis, managing that. So how about your experiences like transitioning to the pro tour? I know that's such a tough place to play and everything, but I mean, how was that experience for you? I mean, you talked about earlier, like the travel and things like that, and like to far out places. What was that experience like for you?
Um, when I was like, when the younger you are, the less pressure you are, the more you can come out the gates. I felt like I really, you're almost like you have a hunter's mentality when you're young, and so you're not really thinking about things, and so it's really you're just playing, right? And you're like you're kind of hunting, and that's really important. But when you get to the higher levels, there's one of the biggest things is the difference in physicality. I remember like I played. It happened like this is one of the things that sticks out, especially for my first time around on the pro tour, is the adjustment to the physicality, and not in terms of like what it takes to win points necessarily, that too for sure, but you're playing in some of the hottest places. Like I'm Canadian, right? And you're from Maryland. I don't know how hot it gets there, but it's no Australia or South America. It's a big adjustment, and that's one big thing is you're now going out there, you're playing some hot places, and then you're playing against the best in the world in draw format. So you're not playing like college tennis one. So every match you play, you're playing to win a title. You got to win 5, 6 matches or 7 matches, and every match gets tougher. And obviously on the pro tour, there's so many 7-6s, 6-4s in the thirds. It's just very rarely ever a 2-2 or a 1-1. So that's a big thing there. And then, like I remember I played Marcos Giron. I was up 5-3 in the third. And the day before in the quarters, I played Marcel Felder. He was about 200 ATP. I won 7-5 in the third. So I beat Felder 7-5 in the third. And I was, what one thing for me is like, sometimes my body would really start to ache and I would have trouble sleeping. So then I played Giron off 3 hours of sleep because that match against Felder took everything out of me. So I play Giron and I go up 5-3 in the third. So now I'm dealing with the stress of playing a guy that's like 55 in the world now. Okay, it's hot. Okay, I'm dealing and every point is so physical because he's not a quick player. Like you got to work your points, and my body starts cramping up 5-3 in the third. Wasn't ready physically for it. 2 weeks later, I'm playing Norbert Gombos. He's 70 in the world, and I go in the third set 1-0 and completely gas out. And I worked my butt, like I was busting it in fitness like crazy. It's another level of physicality like what it takes to win points against the top 100 players in the world is just, people don't understand how tough it is to win a point off these guys. And then every round you win, you got to do it tougher and tougher. Like it's crazy, and you got to do it in some hot places. Like it's just like you got to. It's very difficult. But you got to. Like I was just talking, Matt Rea, Dr. Matt Rea just came into the Prep Academy. He's now the head strength and conditioning coach for the Saints. He overlooks all the performance department. And we were talking. I asked him a question. That was the one thing I wish I kind of figured out more is I worked my ass off in fitness, but you need to know how to do the supplements. You got to know how to do the nutrition properly, because that's really what it takes. After I lost the Gombos there, I remember I rest my playing career. I never drank anything but water, and on the occasional alcohol, but no drinks, no pop, only water, right? Because I knew that's what I needed to cut out to have a chance to just finish matches against these guys. That was the biggest thing. And obviously the travel gets a lot of people. Like tennis is tough. You have to leave your friends, leave your family. That's what stopped me in the end there. I didn't love traveling, and I was a homebody. And so it's like, it's crazy. It doesn't come down to the tennis at a point. I think it comes down to like how much you love the sport more than you love other things in life. And then a big thing is like, do you have the physicality to let yourself play your best tennis every single day?
Yeah, that's super interesting to hear about that. I mean, I've seen Gambos and Giron both in person, really good players. Yeah, that's some high quality stuff there, Raheel. Very cool. And then, as I understand it, is it that you at some point you created Mission Elite, you founded it, and then you actually like tried the Pro Tour again? Is that? Oh, wow.
Yeah. So when I left Oklahoma, it's funny. I was supposed to be there for a couple of years, and by the end of that first season, or by the end of my that season there at OU, we lost in the Sweet 16, and I was studying the game intensely, obsessively, almost. And I probably played 4 times that whole year, but because I was studying the game so intensely, like our head coach would throw me in some sets here and there, rusty. So when I got over my fear, like I got over my belief of rust, I started to think, oh, rust is mental, because I'm feeling good. And I really believe that to this day. Like, and I saw it with my head coach at Indiana. He was number 1 in the country, barely played, but when he'd go in, it didn't look rusty at all, because that was out of his mind, didn't believe in rust anymore. And I would strongly say I don't believe in rust anymore. So that was one thing, but because of how much I was studying the game, I was playing much better tennis. So I played 4 times that year at OU, but when I went in, I was thinking so clearly, because like you studied the game so much. Now I bet you wish you were back at Maryland and could apply everything you learned, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's kind of what I was getting to do when coach would throw me in those practice sets with our guys, and I was like pretty successful. And I said, like, I think I still got more in me, and now I have a whole nother level of knowledge. Let me get back out there and do this. And nice. So I went back on tour, and it was probably one of the best, because I still had that empty hole, and I still think I had more to give. And I didn't know if what my potential was. So that was my ability to go and see it. I also needed like 2 hip surgeries at the time, so that was why I got out of there. But so that's when I started Mission Elite, when I went on the tour there, because I wanted a way to stay connected with the NCAA. I loved it. You know how it is. Like there's nothing better than college sport, right? It's crazy.
Yeah.
I loved it. I hated the Pro Tour in comparison to NCAA.
All by yourself, yeah.
Team tennis, that was my everything. So I wanted to stay connected with it, and so I started Mission Elite, and it was basically a management and consulting company for these players. It's tough because these teams, like you have a coaching staff, right? And these guys, like, obviously, the truth is that coaches in the NCAA, their job is to look after the team. Okay. Look after the team. And sometimes that does get in the way of the individuals. And sometimes the individuals don't get the attention. It's 3 coaches for 12 players. That's a 1-to-4 ratio. That's tough. So the company was set in place there to give individual attention to players or programs in need. And so it started actually as a management or as a consulting company for the NCAA. Then the pandemic hit. I was in the semis of an event in India, flew back, and it's funny. At that point, I kind of was like, I think I know how far I could go. I don't think I reached my potential, but I think I could have got to probably the 200s, 300s, but just kind of knowing that gave me a peace of mind to leave. And I saw an opportunity when the pandemic hit. I had all of my friends on the tour, and they came back to no support, no guidance, no nothing. Same with the NCAA players. And I kind of took on the responsibility of the company being that for these players there and being the support that is missing, as past juniors, or the federation. So the NCAA players and the pro players that aren't top 100, they need a place to be too. They need people too. And we were happy to be that for them there. And it kind of grew into what it is now,
Yeah, I love that. Definitely going to ask obviously more about Mr. Lee, but I'm curious too, how you mentioned that you kind of assessed that you would likely, max for you would be like 200 to 300. So it's sort of a similar question, I guess, to the whole top 10 versus top 50 in NCAAs. But how did you kind of come to the conclusion that maybe your max would be 200 to 300s, and then what would be what were some things that you would have needed to maybe get to top 100? Let's say.
Yeah. I think you need an X factor. And I don't think my X factor was big enough. I think you either need to be, you need to be complete. Everybody's a solid player, right? But I think you need X factors, a Braden Schnurr serve or an Isner serve, or you need Schwartzman speed, or De Minaur speed. I think that's what it takes.
So one huge weapon.
Yeah, and I don't think I had a huge enough weapon. I think my greatest weapon was my competitiveness and maybe my tennis IQ. But I think you need physical weapon, a huge physical weapons. And crazy as that sounds, coming from me, I'm a big mental guy, I'm a big competitive guy, but I think you just need to be a great, when I say great, top 100 tennis player, I think you need physical weapons, whether that be super speed or super huge shots. I just think that. I think you can get the clutchness factor. I think you can get the mentality factor. I think it's critical that you have major weapons. And I don't think I had big enough weapons. I don't think I was fast enough or hit big enough, even though I started to develop a little bit of a big forehand and I had really good tennis sense. I don't think I was fast enough, fit enough, and I don't think I had a big enough game.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting because I was trying to think of some players who didn't really have much, but even when I was thinking of Ferrer or other people, they still have that speed, which is a big weapon. So if you had a choice, which would be your X factor?
Yeah, I would definitely say I'd love if I could keep my brain there, I would love to have big game, just because I just think it would be so much. I think it honestly, I think it's the way to go, because you have to take into consideration the demand that your body takes when you're just a fast player. I think that's half the thing too, is can you, did I lose you there? Oh, you're here?
You're back. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's got to be the big game, because it's a difference between playing points where you got 3-4 shots and you have 10-12. And so, obviously we want, I see this all the time. I think there are better tennis players than these big players, but they are so tired by the quarters because they've had to fight for every point. And it's interesting,
Yeah, I definitely take that too, a big serve. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, definitely. Obviously, want to ask you about Mission Elite. So I guess you did explain kind of what it's all about, but I'm curious maybe to even go further into the details. I mean, so with managing the players. So do you help them like financially as well, or like I guess you give them like all the coaching they need? Like maybe talk a little bit more about how that works.
Yeah, we have a scholarship. We're based off like a scholarship system there. So there's milestones for scholarship there. Like everybody's paying, but it's just, there's milestones to pay to different extents and the support you receive, and depending on the players and what they need, we could go as far as being their full-time guys, like Braden's situation, where he needed everything and the company took on everything for Braden, or Miriam, where, she had a great team already set up there. And, we really just took the support role in terms of like, okay, you have access to all our staff, our resources, and we will help with basically any support that you need from other standpoints. So variance in terms of, it's really like we're here to help you as much as you need. And then based off that, we are a little bit of at least from the elite team forward, very selective as to who we bring on there. And like we kind of look at character results. Obviously, they matter for that standpoint, and who we think has potential, and chemistry, but from then there's the junior now. Like we've really branched into the prep academy, for example, and now that's giving everybody a chance to follow our developmental pathway to eventually, hopefully, be a part of our elite team, where obviously they get another level of kind of support and benefits there. But it is all based off a scholarship, a scholarship system, where it's not like we're paying any players. We might just give them scholarship rates on our services of whatever that may be. And that's the approach. And so the company was specifically originally set up to be that clear support that was missing for basically players outside the top 100 and to the NCAA, or like juniors not top juniors not picked up by the federation or the national system.
Right.
So, but now we've kind of branched into filling from juniors to below that to top 100 players even. So like everybody, the company's grown and we can kind of grow with it. So it's interesting. But the base of the whole company was always to actually, it started with my love for the NCAA. I think, as I think it's probably one of the most memorable times of our lives, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, for us, UMBC, we're kind of a mid-major D1, so like my senior year winning our conference, and then getting to NCAAs, playing Duke, like that was awesome. Definitely very memorable and fun to share it with other like-minded individuals. I saw your player roster and you have Alex Donsky. Isn't he the fellow who has like that Operation Lift Off? I don't know if he does it now, but like the YouTube stuff.
Yeah, so Donsky, cool. Whenever he's in town there, we get him out there, we support him, we train him, and his brother obviously as well, Mike Donsky. But yeah, Alex, I played on tour with him. I won a title with him actually in South Africa.
Oh wow.
So that's where so like a lot of it is like when I stopped, I just went and I basically said I knew what these guys were facing as I played on tour with these guys, and I knew the challenges they were facing, and I said, okay, let me be the guy to solve this for them. And be there for these guys. And so, Alex is a guy we're there for if, whenever he needs. And it's interesting. Yeah, interesting. We knew each other when we were really young. And then on the tour, we played together, won a title in South Africa, and kind of, took our friendship to another level after that. And yeah, when he was in town, I knew he needed support, or the company could support him. We will.
Yeah, I love that, and definitely tell him to keep making more content. But yeah, that's so cool too, because I remember watching his videos when he was like trying to get at ATP point, and I saw he's ranked pretty high right now. So that's really cool to see as a follower. And just so everybody knows, like the location, I don't think we mentioned that. Like, can you let us know like where the location or locations are?
Yeah. So the physical locations are all around the greater Toronto area, physical locations for you to come in and train. But obviously we have travel coaches set up all across the world. Like that's part of the company too, as we said, We have travel coaches that overlook our players or go with our players, or we have that set up there. We do a lot of traveling ourselves. So, and then so much of the company is remote. We help through the tennis university, through the recruiting company, which is like an agency. Travel. Like I said, travel coaching. And we are working on actually in 2 other physical locations right now that when they get approved, hopefully they do, we'll be able to release those. But yeah, the main place will most likely, be in the Greater Toronto area. You come out here, we'll, reach out to us and we'll try to set you up, and we'll try to hook you up with situations for when you go in there. Because the thing with tennis is, especially in the level that we really started off tackling, which was the pros and NCAAs, it's just they're on the road so much. So they needed those resources that could kind of support their lifestyle for pro and NCAA tennis, which is, being on the road. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And we'll obviously have links to for people to be able to check out Mission Elite and contact you and all that. And I know that you have at Mission Elite 17 principles. I was wondering if you could go through a couple of your, highest priority ones that you think would really help the audience to up their game.
Yeah, they're all really important to me, but there is the reason why the number one is the number one. Character is everything. That's one of the main ones. That's probably the most important one because, well, essentially, your character is what you're made up of, and that sets the base for everything you do. And your character can get in the way of your success. In some ways, I think Tiger Woods' character got in the way of his success. I think we talk about reaching your full potential. I think he could have been better. Maybe same with Mike Tyson. Well, definitely. He was put in jail a couple of years during his prime years. Allen Iverson, perhaps a little bit. And you see that when they make character mistakes away from their sport, it has a huge, so if you think about Tyson, Woods, their character errors were done outside of the court. So who they were as people, and it impacted their success in their craft. And a Mission Elite is about basically being committed to your mission, which is usually your craft, but it's interesting on who you are in that how you are as a person outside of your craft has such a big impact in your success within your craft. So the question is, does your character get in the way of your success? Wayne Gretzky, greatest hockey player of all time, was rarely ever in the media for bad headlines there. And so he allowed himself to be liquid and play and do what he was supposed to do. Nadal too, you never hear anything. He's not getting involved in any and Kyrgios, for example, perhaps could be a player that has at times gotten in the way of himself. So has he reached his full potential? Probably not in terms of his abilities. And I think he's had a lot of distractions, but I don't like to be too critical on him because I think he's being himself, and I think you have to respect that. But my point being is that who you are as a person, do you treat people well? One of the most interesting things I ever saw was when I was at Oklahoma. We had a player, his name was Spencer Papa. He won an NCAA championship and he played main draw US Open, and he was the number one guy on our team. And, I'd come from teams where we were really doggy, we wanted each other's throats at the time. We wanted those positions, and we had some tough cats, some assholes, but that's one of the reasons why we bonded too. So mind you, and I went to Oklahoma, I saw Spencer Papa. Everybody loved the guy. He treated the janitor just like the head coach.
Nice.
His teammates loved him. So, it's true. We're fighting for lineup spots. Oh, if anybody's going to be our one guy that we don't mind, it's Spencer. And now, because he treats people so well, his character is so strong, everybody wants to help him. Donors, coaches, teammates, everybody's sticking their neck out to help this guy because they just love the guy. He treats people so well. He's just such a great person. Everybody wants to help the guy. So what happens when everybody wants to help you? How could you not be successful? So that's so true. I mean, no, the asshole on the team, everybody's hoping they lose, even though they're your teammate. It's true. A guy's so cocky. like people are begging for the guy to lose. So you have all this negative energy that comes towards you based off your character. It's crazy how who you are as a person will impact your success. And there was like, I won't name who it was, but there was a CEO of one of the biggest companies in the world, and he's a good friend of mine, and he's advises us a lot at Mission Elite. And you know, I asked a colleague of his, a VP, and I said, like, why is he so successful? I'm talking about like one of the biggest companies in the world. You'll know it for sure. I just can't say it, right? Don't want to release it. But he said one of the reasons he's so successful is because everyone loves the guy. So they put him in opportunities to be successful because that's who they want to be their leader. This guy. They want to be led by this guy. Nobody wants to be led by the asshole, I think. They want to take him down. So it's crazy. That's the first principle. Character is everything. Do you get in your own way or not? And so you have to live a clean life, be a good person, treat people well if you want to reach your full potential within the craft. I think that's a really interesting principle. A couple other ones is like one that's really cool is like attack the cold. I think it's principle number 14, attack the cold. And people don't really know what I mean by that one, but what it means is that, the cold is a representation of discomfort, and you just got to, ice bath, you just got to jump in. You have to just jump into these things that are uncomfortable, because if you're willing to do that, the world like frees itself, opens itself up to you. Anything that whether it's asking the girl out, you've been tremoring in fear to do, you just got to go. You can't just go in the cold. You can't just go in and ask her. You're going to hesitate. You're going to get sweaty. You're going to stumble your words. She's going to turn you down. You have to go at it, and hey, let's go out. She's going to be thrown off by the confidence or, jump in the ice bath. Just jump in. Done. Get over the fear. So I think that's a really interesting principle. Attack the cold. You take that anything that is scary to you, uncomfortable, discomfort, just go. Don't even think, just go and see what happens to your life. Like you become courageous. It's not about like fearlessness. It's more about courage, the courage to just jump into things that scare you and see what that does for your life. Another one is like number 2, everything in life is for you. I think that's a really powerful one because I think winners truly believe that everything is happening for them. Like they're in alignment with their goals. And so even when they get the door shut down, it's almost like this door was meant to shut in my face for a reason. They believe in a greater picture to their struggles. And, and it's funny because everything that I felt has been, that I could have felt would have been like fatal or detrimental to our company has in the weirdest way turned out to be to its benefit. Like coaches getting denied their visas to come work for us ended up being the best thing for us in some weird ways, or like, getting denied facility, opportunities gave me the freedom to explore different avenues of the company. It's just, I think ultra successful people just have this inner belief that even their like losses, their failures are supposed to happen for them to reach their greater, bigger goal. And I think that's the case in everything. I love, I love actually making like, it's kind of, I do it as a joke, but romantic metaphors because I know it's something everybody goes through romance in their life, but it's like, okay, so you're dating this girl and you've been, she's 24, you're 24 years old, whatever, and she breaks up with you and you're like devastated. Oh my God, I was supposed to marry this girl. And she was like an A, or she was like an A minus. Okay. She was an 8 out of 10 and you would have married this girl. Okay. But little did you know that you broke up 10 years later, you're going to meet an A plus, a 10 out of 10. And now you get to marry that 10 out of 10. The thing is like, if the 8 out of 10 never broke up with you, you would have just had an 8 out of 10. But because she broke up with you 10 years later, you got the 10 out of 10. And like that unwavering belief that you were meant to do something great or you were meant to have a great life is, I think, the mentality that what we call a mission elite or the ultimate competitor has, where you lost in the finals of this Grand Slam and it's the reason you win 4. So like There's a couple principles that I think are really cool, neat.
Yeah, I love a lot of those. First, I have several follow-ups. First of all, I think Attack the Cold would be a great book title.
Yeah.
That's something maybe you could write in the future there.
Yeah.
And also, yeah, I was listening to a podcast. I think it might have been Ryan Holiday. Maybe it was him, but talking about stoicism. But yeah, he mentioned kind of like, I mean, I just love this attitude of like, oh, if something bad per se happens, it could be, for better, in the future. Like, I think he talked about a guy who like had broken his leg or something, and his friend was like feeling bad for him, and he said, "Oh, don't worry, like last time I had a health issue, I was in the hospital, and then I like met my wife, so I'm
Yeah.
sure that like this will lead to something good as well, stuff like that." So that just that like positive attitude is like irreplaceable.
Yeah.
And also I did see it. Speaking to integrity, I saw that you were I think you got a sportsmanship award at some point, like in when you were in Indiana, and just all that to say, like it's definitely huge. Like if you can show yourself to have good integrity, you'll get a lot of respect, and like you said, people will support you and want to help you. Versus, like say if you just are known as like a cheater or something like that, then like first off, your reputation is going to be pretty bad, but then no people aren't going to root against you. So just a lot of great points there that I really enjoyed you talking about. So just as far as like availability or I guess who could join Mission Elite or experience the training and whatnot, like who is like the appropriate audience?
Now it's everybody, like we really made that effort to make it accessible to everybody because, and at the time I didn't foresee it, but we're very selective in terms of pros and NCAA players in the beginning. That's all we helped in the very beginning. And that was where my real focus and passion was at the time. Obviously, it was where I related to the best. I'd only played and coached in the NCAA, and I only played on the pro tour. So that's all I kind of focused on and knew. But what happened is got a lot of demand from juniors and even different people in their own different scenarios, and and it kind of like it's kind of warmed me over time. It felt bad. We don't have anything for these guys. We're not helping. We're not supporting them. And they want to. It's very hard to say no to somebody that comes to you and asks for help. I don't think that's a good trait to be like that. And so, especially people that want to learn, it's like I don't know. I don't like the idea of turning people away like that. I want to learn some of the principles that we believe so strongly in at Mission Elite. So then there was the tennis university that opened up for everybody. That was kind of like a virtual platform for them to kind of like get coached by us in that first step there. And then the prep academy, which became open to all ages and skill levels to prepare them for the higher level tennis, which, I don't know if they were getting, it wasn't as accessible for them to kind of, it's tough. Like the federation, they're very selective, 3-4 players. Everybody before the age of 16, 17 should have the opportunity to be trained properly to see their full potential. Yeah. I don't think it's something you should shut the door down. The problem is there's a shortage of coaches and there's a shortage of quality of coaches. And so we really need to provide, we need our best coaches to be accessible to the public, because there's this idea, it's why some philosophers believe that if you were to solve the first global issue you should solve shouldn't be global warming or whatever, or poverty. It should be education. In that, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's one that kind of hit me. It's that, look, you see a lot of third world countries and how many children go uneducated. And we have Albert Einstein and Greta Thunberg, that girl, the climate change girl, and they were blessed to have the opportunity to have education. But there are billions of children in third world countries that don't have the opportunity to be educated because they don't have access to education. So how many potential geniuses are we missing out of that maybe could solve the climate problem, or the space issues with space or energy or renewable energy? But because we have not prioritized educating each and every children, essentially what we have done is not prioritize every child reaching their full potential. So that's a much bigger grand scale of what I think within the tennis department. I'm talking about education, like academic education in the world, to provide these kids in third world countries who don't have any opportunity to education, the opportunity to be educated and make the impact on the world that maybe they potentially can. Like, what are the odds that we're not missing out on a couple brilliant geniuses who just died before the age of 8, lack of food, or didn't have proper education, and they could have been the person to solve some of our biggest problems in the world. You just don't know. And I kind of think about that a little bit in tennis. Is how do you know we're not missing out on the next Roger Federer who just didn't have access to proper courts or coaching? You don't know. And so whatever steps we can take towards maybe finding that hidden gem who could impact the world in a better way, we should. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy, but if we can take small steps toward it, we should. And I think what you're doing when you provide free education on your platforms is a step in the right direction. YouTube's a step in the right direction. You don't have to pay for a teacher anymore. You're going out and, look at the types of people you're having, the knowledge base you're sharing with your players. They could get coaching from your Instagram, So we're taking steps in the right direction with people that like you that are willing to put free knowledge out there,
Yeah. Thanks. Really appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, you made me think about there's countless stories of kid who almost was going to die, and then a doctor saved them, and then all of a sudden they become a doctor, where it's just situations where you never know, if you just give somebody a chance, and health and education, like you said, two basic necessities, but you never know how far they can get. So I really enjoyed that point you made there. Wonder if you could give us maybe a tip or two for club level players who when they get into the competitive environment, it just kind of, it's tough for them. They get nerves and they're unsure of themselves, things like that. I was wondering if you could give them a couple pieces of advice. We get a lot of players who they're playing USTA matches, and then maybe they'll go to a regionals or sectionals or even nationals, and it's maybe they're just mental game isn't quite there. So any tips for them?
Yeah, club level, pro level, I think we've all been there, like we talked about earlier there. One big thing that helped me is whenever I would get into that, there's two types of mental states I like to think of. I mean, there's the nervous one where you're kind of trying to protect and just trying not to embarrass yourself.
Yeah.
And then there's the I'm going to go attack this. And it's so there's a TED talk when I was applying. I came across it. Thank God I did. But it's a military man, and he talks about how do these Navy SEALs tackle some of these some of the most challenging circumstances or whatever tasks that are put in front of them. If you think about it too long, you can get really, really nervous and paralyzed about it. And one of the ways to tackle it is, you have to. There's two things, right? So, okay, I'm at a club. I'm going to go play sectionals. Okay, it's my first time playing sectionals. Is this a threat? Is it going to make me nervous? Yeah, I'm out of my comfort zone completely. It's threatening. It's threatening to me and my what I'm trying to do. But it's critical that you view things as a challenge over a threat. See, those two words, threat, is fear induced. It's nerve wracking. It's paralyzing, and it's hyperventilation. Threat. I'm threatened. I'm on guard. You shift that, sectionals. Well, that's a challenge. Excitement, aggressive, attack, go get it. And so just I like to use the difference. So when a circumstance is in front of me, do I view it as a challenge or a threat? And naturally, our natural instincts are to view it as a threat. But to go and perform at your best, you have to shift it to, you have to view it as a challenge. This is at my senior year. I was supposed to play. You talked about playing your old teammate or whatever. The same thing happened to me my senior year. The first match of the season, I was playing my teammate. He was on a different team, my high school teammate, and I was expected to kill the guy. And I knew everybody back home was going to watch this match and talk about it, and I was threatened because I had all the pressure. And I remember I came across this TED Talk during this time there, and it talked to me the difference about viewing things as a challenge or a threat. And I kind of like shifted the perspective. So my tip to these players would be, my challenge to them is, can you view it as a challenge instead of a threat? Exciting, go get it. Aggressive, let's do this. Instead of a threat, paralyzing, paranoid, scary, scared to be embarrassed, nerve-wracking. It's just a shift in perspective, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I really love that. Yeah, challenge. It makes it exciting and something to go for.
Yeah.
The TED Talk, was that by any chance by Jocko Willink? Because the guy who's like really jacked, or was it like a different, like older
I
gentleman?
think it was a different guy, but Jocko has some good stuff.
Yeah.
Like Jocko talks about everything in life is for you. There's a video. He goes, "Lost your job? Good.
Yeah.
Broke up
Good.
with you? Good." That's essentially it. Good,
Yeah.
good. Everything's good. Everything's good. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I enjoy his stuff. Great stuff there. How about one piece of advice that that you've gotten from a tennis coach or maybe a fellow tennis pro or player that you've continued to implement every day in either on the tennis side of things or just in general daily life?
Yeah, that's a great question there. I think one of the greatest pieces of advice I've ever gotten was, it's really like understanding you're the only one that gets to live your life. So to not over care about what people think about you or how you live your life. And that's where you're allowed to be your most boldest, authentic version of yourself. Everybody's going to judge you. Wow, are they losers? Because why aren't you out there living your own life instead of judging other people's lives? And at the end of the day, don't do things you don't want to do that aren't good for you. Attacking the cold, that's good for you. You don't want to do it, but that's good for you. But don't do things that you don't want to do that aren't good for you. Like, for example, why am I playing tennis when it's my parents that want me to? Or, if I don't want to play tennis, that's why I talked about Kyrgios. I kind of respect the fact that he's honest about he doesn't like tennis. It's not where his passion is. And so, that's okay. I'm not going to judge him. Like, it's your life. You get one life to live it, because people are like, oh, it's a waste of talent, blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't respect that. I respect the fact more like you care more about your opinion of yourself rather than what people want or expect of you. Everybody trash talks the guy, and but I respect the fact that he lives life the way he wants it. I think he can treat people better, absolutely. But in terms of that regard of like, it's your one life. Go do what you want to do with your one life, because at the end of the day, they don't get to live it for you. You do. And when you're on your deathbed, you're going to say, I wish I lived my life, and I wish I didn't live my life for somebody else. Good book. It's called Tuesdays with Morrie. It talks about life lessons from a guy on his deathbed. And, I always say, like, you want to know what matters in life, go be around like the elderly and see what they care about. They don't care about like social media. They don't care about like being fake. They don't care about like pleasing others. They're going to, they're coming to the end there, and they're doing things the way they want to do that. And I think that's one of the greatest things is like, you want to go learn to surf, go. You like, how do you want to live your one life? I think that's huge. That's a huge thing to keep in the top of our mind. Is like, then you ask yourself, like, sometimes we're doing things that we don't want to be doing. Like, why are we sucking up to this guy? This is not what we want to be doing. Like, you kind of become conscious to the things in your life that you're just like, why the hell am I doing this? Doesn't make sense. This is not how I want to live my life.
Yeah, a lot of truth in that. I mean, I'm definitely like more on the people pleaser side. So I've, in the past, like, even sometimes now, and to a lesser degree, thankfully, do things like for others, and it's good in a way, but then also you're like, oh damn, why did I do this when I could have been doing something that would have advanced myself more often?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's it's a tough
yeah,
balance there. Yeah, and I do remember I forget the name of the YouTube channel, but there's definitely one that I'm thinking of where like this guy like interviews like people in their like 90s or 100s, and they talk about like their life lessons. There's like millions of views, so I'll have to link that in the show notes.
yeah, yeah.
That would be great. Um, what do you think like the three biggest mistakes amateur players like make? What do you think?
Yeah. I think the three biggest mistakes that amateur players make is one, they complicate the game. They're thinking too complicated. Like even it's like we had some players. I'm getting exposed to kind of younger level tennis now, and they'll kind of say, do I need to change my grip? And, like, do I need to use more wrist and more backswing and more flick? And I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. All you got to do is lift the ball a little bit higher and you're on the mark.
Right.
And, or all you got to do is really center the ball, just center the ball or step to where you're trying to go. And I think that one of the big things that amateurs make is they throw their common sense away and they think that the sport or success is more complicated. The pathway to success is more complicated than it actually is. Um, and so I like to think and even have our coaches teach in a very simplistic manner where teach our players how to view this game almost like checkers, not chess.
Mhm.
Look, the harder you want to hit, the more through the ball you have to go. Okay, I missed three balls long. Let me not lift up on my swing. Let me just go through. I miss in the net. Let me keep my left arm up longer or my head up longer. I missed long. Sorry, I missed wide. Let me not open up my hips so much. Just go through. Let me just control my hand. Like, and that these beginner players or whatever amateur players, they need to learn to problem solve simpler, and not think it's so complex, and like that you can't just that's a big thing. The next thing I would say is I think people in that amateur level underestimate the value of hitting hard. um,
Hmm.
I think that the errors to winner ratio is so high in kind of a beginner more so level that common sense is like they all think we need to have the big shots at that stage, but like you and I attested to win in juniors, it really comes down to who's willing to be out there longer and make less mistakes. Um,
Yeah.
and you and I would both probably know it's like it's crazy how many mistakes beginner players make. And so if you're just more disciplined and you're just like taking less risks in at that stage of development, you could win everything. And then when you dominate that pond, then you're going to have to learn, okay, I got to go for a little bit more to win the next pond. And it actually eventually comes down to can you win points instead of, but in that early stage, it's everybody's losing the games for themselves. Nobody's ever like being beat.
Right.
And I think that's a big thing there is like, I talk to my juniors a lot about that. It's like crazy. You think that they're a better tennis player than you, but no, you just like gave them 5 errors in 2 minutes there. It's crazy. So I think that's a big thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Thanks for that. Great pieces of advice. So my next question is 3 books you would gift a friend to help them improve their tennis game. I will let you off the hook with the first one because I know you mentioned I think Tuesdays with Maury, right? So I don't know if you want to just do 2 or more or whatever. But
I'll do 3. I'm a big book guy.
okay,
I put out a quarterly book list.
sweet.
So that should be online too. But
Okay, can link
greatest
that.
book I ever read. Greatest book I ever read was 12 Rules for Life. It has nothing to do with tennis, but it's have you heard this book?
I have heard it. I haven't read it though. Yeah.
Hey, I actually would probably give credit to this book as being one of the best coaches for my life in tennis too. Interesting. It kind of teaches you, it kind of helps you, gives you some theories or perspectives on how to navigate your life in a way that's going to make your life better. For example, like one of the chapters is stand up straight with your shoulders back. It means like willingly take on responsibility. And like a lot of these principles, do what's, don't do what's like easy, do what's going to sacrifice for the future. I didn't say that real properly, but go through the chapters there. It's a way to navigate life, but you could also have it be a way to navigate tennis. I think that's a great book, 12 Rules for Life. So it's another great book.
And that's Jordan Peterson, right?
That's Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've seen his stuff.
Yeah. Another great book would be, let me think here. I got so many good ones here. Tough, but I really want to say these right.
No worries.
A different type of book would be, it's called The Alchemist.
Okay.
You heard that? And it's a story type of book, but there's a lesson within the story, which is this was one of the books that got me back to the Pro Tour the second time I read it. And it was about whenever you're like, kind of like, you have to listen to your insides, and when something's calling for you, you have to go and do it. College coaching called for me at a point. Going back to the Pro Tour called for me at a point. Starting Mission Elite called for me at a point. And to listen to what like your most inner desires are, like those are what you value essentially. And if you kind of suppress what you value, then you're suppressing your one life. And so it's all about, The Alchemist is a story about a boy who goes on a journey kind of into the unknown, and it's an adventure. It's like a calling to life. And so I think it's a deep, profound book, but the lessons within it are really, really incredible.
Awesome.
And I think a third great book would be, I like to read a lot of different types of books, but third great book would be, well, Tuesdays with Morrie is a great one because again, it's like I really actually am not a big tennis guy, believe it or not. I think that I try to do, yeah, I try to, well, not even a tennis book guy. I'm not a big tennis guy. I try to use tennis which is my strength, as kind of a pathway to kind of like what I think matters, which is how people live their life. So Tuesdays with Morrie for me would be my third one, just because I think, like nobody's going to care about if you won 7-6 in the third against John Rocco in the quarters of your club championships 10 years from now. And you're not going to care either when you're on your deathbed there. It's like,
true.
I think tennis, if you love tennis, you do tennis. And if you're good at tennis and you can make an impact through it, like you're doing, I think, then it's a really meaningful life's purpose. But this is the thing. It's like, people that live and die by tennis and view it as life when really it isn't. It's important that they kind of remember this is just a game there, but tennis is a pathway to life, and it's a metaphor for life. But don't ever feel bad because you weren't a great tennis player, because nobody really cares. But use tennis to be a great person. So Tuesdays with Morrie is a great one because it's 10 lessons about what people value on their deathbed, and what maybe you should consider as important in your life. So,
yeah, wonderful stuff. Definitely can't wait to dig into those books there. Appreciate that. So, what's next for you and Mission Elite?
Yeah, so what's next is, well, we're looking to, we have about a month left of our preparatory academy. We have a bunch of NCAA players and top juniors and, aspiring junior top players coming in there. We want to close that on a strong note there. But what's next really is like with the Rogers Cup coming to town there's going to be some pro players that we're going to help kind of prepare for those events there. So really kind of focusing in on getting them ready and geared up to hopefully have a great event there. So we've opened up Mission Elite to all pros, internationals that are playing in the event that need a base or whatever. So we'll be taking care of some of these players there. That's really our next big thing. Just kind of, with it being our home event, helping them prepare there. So, yeah.
Super exciting. Yeah, I love that. It's going to be fun. And where's the best place or places for people to follow you and Mission Elite, whether that's, website or like social media, like anything that you'd like to shout out?
Yeah, the best place is probably through the Instagram there. Our guy does a great job of managing that social media. I would say that's the place where all the interesting stuff is mainly going to right now. I mean, obviously we're on LinkedIn and we're on YouTube and TikTok and Facebook and all that stuff. But I would say the main place to go is the Instagram there. As there's a lot of interesting stuff there, and our guy does a great job managing that. It's a lot. It's a full-time job for him. So
yeah, definitely. Definitely is. Very cool. So last question that I pretty much always ask my guests, and you've given us a lot of amazing advice today, which I really enjoyed, and I'm sure the viewers have as well, is what's one key piece of advice that you can give our audience to help them improve their tennis games?
yeah, one key piece of advice is this theory that we talk a lot about. It's micro adjusting. And what that means is like you have 24 seconds between each point, and you should use those 24 seconds to evaluate, but truly evaluate what went right and what went wrong. And I think what a lot of players, they do in between the points is they just use it as a kind of get their breath back. But if you want to progress fast, you should use that time period as almost a judgment period of the process. And so, did I miss long? Okay, I got to bring it down. Did I miss wide? I got to bring it in. Did I miss that first serve and then? I got to stay up on my first serve there. And I would say that the faster you want to grow and improve, the more you need to micro adjust and think critically about your successes and your errors. I think, good players think about what they're doing right and wrong every once in a while, and great players think about what they're doing right and wrong constantly. So I think micro adjusting would be one of the key area within a tennis game that players should really, how often do you micro adjust? And that develops the self-coach that we talked about earlier in this podcast. That's how you become a self-coach.
Love that. Awesome stuff, Raheel. So is there anything else that you want to just mention? I'll just let you have the floor in case there's anything that, I may have missed that you just want to shout out.
No, like all I want to say is, first and foremost, I really appreciate you having me on here. And I've said this multiple times with the podcast there. I think it's incredible what you do and your passion for this, and that you're willing to share so much knowledge with, the public. I think that's like a very noble and meaningful trait, that you're doing through Tennis Files. I think that you're doing a lot through it. So first of all, I was really honored to be on here, right? And I really appreciate you asking me to be on here and having this great conversation. Last I would say, keep in touch. And if we're ever, connected, whether that's through a friend or just, same city or whatever, I'd love to reach out and grab a drink.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely love that. And yeah, just, I really appreciate the kind words and just super impressed by you as well. Like I said, it's, you're a sharp young man, only 25, and you've created a great resource for players, and you're trying to, just improve as many people as you can. And that's extremely noble and noteworthy. So kudos to you, and obviously best wishes on it. I know you'll do great things in the future, and definitely everybody should check out missionelitetennis.com, and we'll have all the links on the show notes page for you to check out the various resources, including the books, and I'll also get the quarterly book list link as well, and all that. So thank you, Raheel. Definitely hope to see you again soon, hopefully in person, and really appreciate you coming on. It was fun.
Really appreciate it. Awesome. Okay, let's keep in touch.
Definitely. Thanks, Raheel.
Okay, cheers.
Cool. Cheers. All right. I hope you really enjoyed my interview with Raheel. Thanks for your time. It was really fun talking to you. Learned a lot for sure, and definitely going to re-listen to this one. And for any of the links that we mentioned today, including the books, TED Talk, for the quarterly book list, and Mission Elite's various Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and their main website, check out the show notes page, which you can check out by going to tennisfiles.com/261 or tennisfiles.com/podcasts. I hope I have that right. I think that's right. But yeah, anyways, besides that, I hope that you're getting to work on your game and improve it, studying the right sources, whether that's the podcast here or any other coaches that you enjoy learning from and think are well suited to teaching you the game. I really do appreciate you listening. And if you enjoyed this episode and if you enjoy the podcast, I would definitely really appreciate it if you would leave a review for the podcast. And you can do that by going to tennisfiles.com/Apple Podcasts or just clicking the review button in Apple Podcasts or the podcast app of your choice that you use to listen to the show. I do find that Apple Podcasts is the biggest mover in terms of getting the show higher up the rankings, which just means that more people see it and get to listen to and benefit from. So you're definitely doing a good service by leaving a review or a rating. Both is great. Either one's great too. So thanks for that. And also want to leave you with a quote, as I often do at the end of the show. And this one is by Nelson Mandela. And Nelson said, "The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall." So we definitely did talk about that on this show, about just, if you hit adversity, you just have to think about it in a positive way, that it will just present newer and better opportunities for you, whether that's, losing the match or a tournament or separating from a coach or just other life events. So yeah, love that quote. Thank you, Nelson Mandela. And thank you again for listening. So I definitely look forward to bringing more great episodes for you. And I think you'll really be interested in the ones to come. So with that, I bid you adieu, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Tennis Files podcast. This is your host, Mirabana Ranchad, signing out.